The Pistons are the basketball champions of the world.
Detroit, it's time. It's playoff time, Detroit. Let's go to work.
Shout out Detroit. I got to buff up, you know what I'm saying? Detroit, I'm all the way in. Detroit Pistons, I'm all the way in. Let's do it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Buffs On Podcast. We are the best POD in the 313. We're talking about one of the greatest stories in all of sports. Once again, the Detroit Pistons coming off a win of 1 of 2 against the Washington Wizards, another win against Portland, and we're going to touch on the road trip where we played the Jazz, the Clippers, and the Warriors. But guys, I got a little present for you guys. These are 100% real and not off of Amazon for a cheaper price because I'm loaded. We got Buffs, boys. So we're coming off a W, so we'll throw the Buffs on. Let's talk about this team. Let's talk about how this team is just completely different from what we've seen last year. And correct me if I'm wrong, Chauncey Billups is the head coach of this team?
No, that's the Blazers who we haven't defeated.
That's the Blazers? Oh, man, I must not pay attention then. I must be a national media member and a Hall of Famer, but that's fine. We're going to talk about how J.B. Bickerstaff should be the coach of the year because he has led this team from, once again, a 14-win team to a team that if we go 13-3 could win 50 games this year. So, Gabe, welcome back to the pod, first of all. It's been a minute since you started a pod with us. I'm going to kick it over to you first. What have you been seeing from this team that you love so far?
It's wins, and it's wins that come starting at the defensive end. I still remember very clearly our first pod. I think it was maybe the second one where you guys discussed could the Pistons be a top 10 defense, and I really didn't believe that they could be, but lo and behold, here we are in March, and they're top 10 in defense. Number one since, I don't know, some not too short time period. And this is what has helped us win games this whole season. And it's kept up. Now when most teams, I think, it's March, it's almost April, teams start to slow down. They start to rest some players and not try. This is our season because of everything that has happened the past 3 years. I think we're just going to go into a hyperdrive here and just out hustle teams, outplay teams, and just have more talent on the court because of rest. So, maybe those 50 wins are in question. We got to go 13-3, but some resting teams, some not. It's really just been the usual. JD has been amazing. He's been locked in. He's had huge alley-oops every single game. Cade is awesome. The one thing I'm very glad is that Malik is back on the bench. For some reason, when he was starting, he just couldn't hit the shots the same way. So now, right back on the bench, right back to hitting threes, and it's good to have Tobias Harris back. He dominated the Wizards and the Blazers. I thought he played really well.
Yeah, we had Tobias for a couple of those games that we lost on the West Coast trip. We might have actually gone 4-0 on that trip. Vali, your thoughts on this team?
Yeah, I fully agree with Gabe that the defense is the catalyst to everything with this organization. And when you look at where we are currently in terms of defensive net rating, and then you look at where we've been since the All-Star break, where I think we're still in the top 3. I don't think that's changed. We have turned up the defense since the All-Star break, and that is the heartbeat to our team. And it's always evident. There's never a unit that struggles to play defense. Starters, bench, even the third stringers with Paul Reed getting out there. But when you look at up and down this roster, I think you almost have to start with Isaiah Stewart, most notably with his 5-block game. And I think that game against Portland really characterized who he is. What do you have? 5 points and 5 blocks. And at the same time, you saw him for the first time what felt like forever. Get completely dunked on. Fair respect to Kamara. Tip my hat to you. Good player, Kamara, and a hell of a jam on Stu. But that defines Stu because I don't think maybe he had 1 block by the time he dunked on him. But that's the thing about him. He's going to jump every single time, and more often than not, Stu's the one coming out on top. And because he jumps every single time, people want to try to get him, and he gets people back frequently. So this defense, I think, has been. I want to say it's been top 3 net rating. I can confirm that since the All-Star break, but kind of top 10, not even in the conversation because we've been higher than that. And talking about Stu, when we were on ESPN, Jalen Duren saying, yeah, Stu should be all defense. I saw a reply that Tobias Harris had on Twitter
Hmm.
the other day. He said, "You guys just don't know. This dude's all team defense. Like those who know know." And we can get into it in a bit later, but it's a shame that Isaiah Stewart's like media representation is often so negative and tied with like low-key a lot of like racist stereotypes. But when I say everybody in this roster, I mean everybody, the starters. JD has picked it up to another extreme level in the defensive end. We've hounded Jalen Durden in the past, and for the past 3, 4, 5 months, we've been able to nonstop praise him, and that hasn't dropped off. If anything, it's increased. His defensive effort, him protecting the hoop, a hell of a guy, hell of a stealer as well. Gets his hand in the passing lane quite a bit. Really active hands. I think he's been a true catalyst to this. And then you look at guys like Asar Thompson, who is just an absolute freak on the defensive end. So I think those are your three obvious catalysts on defense. But you can go up and down this roster, and every other person on this team chips in defensively. Even smaller guys like Dennis Schroeder, who you think might get exposed in the defensive end. You see him picking up James Harden in the clutch. You see him picking up Steph Curry. Same goes to Malik Beasley, who in the past was a guy that teams have targeted defensively, but Beasley like really loves that now. He's really animated on the defensive side of things, claps a lot. I want to give a shout out to Simone Fontecchio. I think he's a guy who's criticized by Pistons fans quite a bit.
Hmm.
But I think Simone on the defensive side of things and his hustle in general, I think that's one of the most underrated aspects of his game. I'm gonna keep blabbering here because Cade Cunningham, since the All-Star break, like the steal numbers, just like sheer box score watching, the steal numbers through the roof. We often give him a break on defense when we can. Top of my head example is him guarding Quinton Post, getting a break against the Warriors. Amit, you pointed that out. But then having the flexibility to go switch on to a Jimmy Butler or switch on to like we're playing the Clippers, a James Harden. I think his height has really come through in that flexibility in our defense. And then, like I said, up and down. Tobias Harris seems just like a way better version of himself in his first stint here in Detroit because of that defensive prowess. Even Timmy, gets beat a lot, but knows where to be. Obviously, the charge master. And again, you can just go up and down this entire roster, and I think every single person on this roster can hang their hat on defense. I want to quickly say that the hustle and like that grittiness overall that guys like Darren, Ron Holland, Isaiah Stewart bring ties in directly with that defense. But our chippiness and like our physicalness our physicality makes us play better. After that win last night, Jalen Duren even said, "When things get chippy, we like that. We play better." Especially when it's the Wizards. But I think that defense is really the identity, and this is my last point. I've been talking for a while, but I said that we're finally forming an identity about a month ago, and Connie said, "What is the identity?" And for 31 games in a row now, the Detroit Pistons have outscored their opposition in the paint, and we play great defense. That's our identity. That's grit and grind. That's Detroit basketball right there.
It for sure is. And another thing I want to go back to when you were touching on Jalen Duren, do you guys know who has the most double doubles under the age of 25 since the beginning of last season?
Um, I gotta guess. I'm not sure though.
You're gonna have to take a guess, and it's not Victor Wembanyama. It is our very own Jalen Duren with 75 double doubles since the beginning of last year, and I think that doesn't even count the one that he got last night. Jalen Duren has been absolutely phenomenal. You touched on a lot of good points there. We have an identity now. JB Bickerstaff said it in his introductory press conference that we're gonna see it by February, March. I think we started to see it before that, and we're seeing it even more so now. And I think teams are. I mean, it's a real test now because when we were coming out and beating some of these teams in the beginning of the year, you could say like, oh, those teams weren't taking us seriously. Teams are taking us seriously now. And it's nice to see that, not only are we beating the teams when they didn't take us seriously, but we're putting up good fights and beating teams when they do take us seriously. It means something to teams when they beat the Pistons now. It's not just like, oh, it's another win. It's a lot of the time with us, it's been a lot of good hard fought battles. We haven't had a blowout in a decent amount of time, which is nice to see. It's just been really refreshing to watch good basketball. You touched on Asar Thompson. I can't go too much farther without talking about that insane sequence he had yesterday. I think it was Alex Sarr that he stuffed, and then that amazing one-handed whip pass to the corner for a triple try that was through. Asar Thompson's been absolutely phenomenal. His offense has been scuffling a little bit as of late. We're still waiting for that shot to come around. So hopefully that starts coming around towards the end of this season and into the beginning of next. But Asar Thompson's been great. Gabe, I kick it over back to you. Do you have anything to add on Asar?
Well, he could take an elbow. He saw that.
You can.
I'm really chippy last night for kind of no reason. I think it's just
Yeah.
Marcus Smart being mad he's now on the Wizards, still coming off the bench. But yeah, Star he's been struggling a little bit offensively. Has had kind of a lot of fouls too, I thought, but he's still doing his thing. Um, Other than that, he some players have had big nights against him. I can't remember now off the top of my head. I mean, James Harden, of course, but that was helped out by the refs a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Trey Young had a decent game against him as well.
Jamal Murray also had a really nice game against him.
But almost Murray aside, just really quick, right back to you, Gabe, but like I feel like it's the effort that teams do to get Asar off of their best player. Like get that switch and then you attack. I think that's really evident.
Yeah, Jamal Murray Asar's always had problems with like smart, slithery players like Jamal, who kind of can like kind of use his athleticism against him almost. I'd like to see him work on that over the summer for next year. Maybe just guard Cade a lot. Um, Other than that, no, Asar still being that steady guy, know what he does. One interesting thing I thought, like Jalen Duren averages like 26 minutes a game, less than that, which is less than last season. It's mainly, I think, due to foul trouble, but also he's just bad sometimes. I'd like to see him, like, I think if we want to be a legit team, he's got to play more minutes. And Asar, too, like, Asar is the type of guy who I think would play like 34, 36 minutes a game just because of his like athleticism and good basketball playing. But he's also like he doesn't average that much playing time, which I guess if your offense is like that bad, it's understandable. You guys mentioned Cade earlier. I thought he struggled a little bit in a few of these games, especially the losses where he just had, and also the win. Was it against Portland where he again had like 8 or 9 turnovers? It's like that. The only like when I think of Cade, I think he's going to be an awesome playoff player. But if you have like 3 turnovers that are just unforced, that can be the difference between a game, a win or a loss in the playoffs.
It for sure can. And one thing I want to touch on over on Cade and his turnovers, he has the third highest usage in the league. Last I checked, it was behind Giannis and Shea, but he does have 4.6 turnovers per game. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And while we have done nothing but praise, rightfully so, Cade Cunningham this season and the improvements that he's made, we still have to understand that he's still growing, and this is just like something he's gonna have to clean up. Um, it seemed, I think, more the turnovers have kind of always been there, but I feel like they're a little more prominent right now because they've come at such inopportune times over the last week or so. Towards the end of the Golden State game, just he needs to. I think Gregory Kelser has also touched on it. He just becomes a little lackadaisical with his passes sometimes. I feel like that's been something we've touched on this podcast before, but I'd like to see him clean that up, especially next season when we're not just going to be the shock of the league anymore. We're going to be expected to make an impact next season, and we'll touch more on that in a little bit. But you guys have anything else, Valley specifically? You haven't had a chance to touch on it, but Cade and his turnovers.
Yeah, and specifically that Golden State game, I think it's going to be really interesting moving forward how teams game plan for him, especially I say moving forward when it comes to, theoretically hopefully playoff games. I don't want to jinx and get ahead of myself. I'm too superstitious about saying playoff games. Even though Toby bought our whole team suits. That game against Golden State specifically, you can see like well the overall experience and intelligence of Steph Curry, and unfortunately Draymond. How they obviously know our starting lineup of Asar and Duran are in there, and they pretty much said, okay, we're gonna give you any perimeter space that you want, and in exchange, we're pretty much gonna put a triple team on Cade every single time he comes off of a screen or he gets downhill. You saw Draymond. I don't really think he technically was guarding anyone, even though I believe Asar Thompson was his man in that starting lineup, and he would kind of just like stand off in the low block on either side and just stop Cade from really getting there. And I think that led to a lot of doubles and triples and a lot of turnovers for Cade. And I think that to me is the biggest concern I have with our success, especially without Jaden Ivey right now, and like another, young ball handler who's going to start. Obviously, we have Schroeder who helps out a bit, but you'd want to have Ivy ideally. So moving forward in the playoff games, or even like those last two games of the season when we have Milwaukee on a back-to-back, like that's going to be a playoff type atmosphere, playoff like preparement for the games, and like the attention to detail that other teams are going to pay to Cade Cunningham, to try to make him cough that ball up. I think that's a huge area of growth that he needs to take at least one smaller step in this season, because teams are only going to do it more and more. Teams are only going to double and triple him more and more. And like you said, like some turnovers, like okay, you got triple teamed in a tough spot, and you had an unfortunate turnover, but there's a lot of them. Like we love to do this where Cade is bringing the ball up the court. Someone comes up in the 3-point wing. We throw it off. Cade throws the pass and tries to run off of him and get to the hoop. We ran a similar play with Schroeder and Cade last time where Schroeder was the one finishing. But I think a lot of those passes have been lazy and just with the ball handling in general. And specifically, like you said, that one where Moses Moody stripped him really late in the game against Golden State. He had 9 of them against Golden State. And I want to say it was 7 against Portland off the top of my head, even though we did win that game. And then you can see like the attention to detail in a game like Golden State or the Clippers where he has, 8, 9 turnovers, and then a game like the Wizards where he can be pretty relaxed, maybe turn it up a few times, and he only had 3 turnovers last night. When you said 4.6 turnovers per game, I honestly assumed it would be higher. He is an incredible playmaker, so take into account he is throwing a lot of passes, a lot of risky passes, completing a lot of risky passes, especially on the lob to Duren. That's got to be the best lob threat in the entire league right now. Um, it's a huge area of concern. Don't get me wrong for Cade, but still a 4th-year guard who pretty much missed his 3rd year. I really think that these are things that are going to be learned. The turnovers won't ever not be there, but they're not going to be back-to-back 10 turnover games like we saw earlier this year, 9 turnover games. I do think that they will go down, and even if in this playoff, eventual, inevitable, hopeful playoff series that we have, if he does have a high turnover series, I well, I would have some concern. I would have more optimism about the next time we're there. Cade learns more, and it's a stepping stone and a learning opportunity where we can eventually decrease those turnovers.
For sure. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this because it was just my opinion. I just wanted to know what you guys thought about it as well. When Cade was being doubled and triple teamed in that Golden State game, I feel like he trapped himself on that sideline a lot
Yeah.
with those actions that you were just referring to. Was that just me, or was I just like paying attention 2 times and it happened and it just felt like a lot?
No, you're right on. I think that was the plan for Golden State. They do have some pretty decent length, especially along the wings, and then Draymond
Mm-hmm.
checking. So I think their plan was to get there. But I almost just want to see him just, I don't want to say force a shot, but like that little put your shoulder into him 15, 17 footer from the baseline for Cade, that's his shot. That's an automatic shot. And we saw him even make that game. So I'd almost want to say like get one up. And especially if they're going to be throwing bodies at you and they're going to be coming towards you, more than likely JD's getting a huge, putback slam or Stu's slapping it back out. I would almost want to just see him shoot the ball.
That's fair. That's fair. Gabe, do you have anything else to add on Cade or anybody else on this roster before we start looking ahead a little bit and talking about the thing that Valley is a little superstitious about?
Really quick,
Yeah.
Gabe, you said JD's only playing 20 something minutes a game.
Yeah.
I think that is also in part because of Isaiah Stewart and because how excellent he's been off the bench. And again, like I'm gonna keep reiterating this pod after pod. I think we have to long term find a way to have overlap in minutes with Stu and Duran, where Stu slides down to the 4. I would love to see that happen, and I think it's almost needed for the long term success of this team.
I get that. I just think if like JD, I guess he's still super young, but if he, develops even more, becomes like he's just really good to have on the court.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in the playoffs, you need your starters to play 32 minutes a game, like at least. Because then, I don't think Simone, I don't think Ron are gonna play really in the playoffs. You need to cut that rotation down. You need to get more minutes for your guys, and you just can't get into foul trouble, which is why I'm a little worried if we do play the Knicks, the Bucks or the Knicks, that Cat or Giannis can get him into foul trouble. Luckily, we do have Stu, but I just think like offensively to have JD on the court would be huge for them. But
Mhm.
other than that, no, I don't have any more. I guess we'll talk later. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit later about like potential playoff adjustments and that we can make once we know who we play. Maybe I'm excited to do that pod. That's for sure.
That is going to be a fun podcast. This first playoff podcast for the Buffs on podcast, hopefully coming very, very soon. But let's talk about it because the Pistons do close out with the season with the Bucks, 2 games straight, and then potentially maybe even playing them in the playoffs. Maybe we play the Knicks. Maybe we play the Pacers. Halliburton again reiterating today that I saw a post from Bleacher Report saying that it's not a rivalry with the Pistons yet. I just want to get your guys' opinion on that. Do you guys think that we have a rivalry with the Pacers yet? And then to boot, what team would you like to face in the playoffs? Because we kind of mentioned it in the group chat with the Bucks and the Pacers playing each other yesterday. But who would you guys like to see in the playoffs?
We absolutely do have a rivalry with the Pacers. Gabe, you got a playoff matchup you prefer?
No, I was gonna say I don't think we really. I think the real rivalry that the Pacers have is with the Bucks. I mean, take that game yesterday again where Halliburton hits the N1 three to win the game. They played 11 times last year. They might match up again today. Um, I wouldn't say we have a rivalry with them, but we do play good games. And I think if we do match up, it'll become chippy, and then we'll be back with that Central Division rivalry pretty soon. But I think we need a little bit of fuel to the fire in order to call it that.
That's fair.
I think it's then at the very least, certainly in the early stages. I mean, even when we beat them in the play-in game, how many months ago in Indiana, even then there was something, and then, the next time we played them in Detroit, they got the better of us, and JB even said in the post-game press conference like, "Oh, you're talking like that, but we kicked your ass on your own court, and you weren't saying anything then." So like, I think their hands down is it. It might not be like a full-blown rivalry yet, but like it's in the early phases of being a rivalry. And if there's a playoff series, and then for the next decade, that's going to be a massive rivalry. But in terms of who I want, like I've been thinking about it a lot, and I've always been thinking like, oh, I just don't want the Bucks. Please don't give me the Bucks. And then I think about it, it's like, well, then why are we tied? Why are we tied with them? Why do they drop so many of these games? Why are they so heavily criticized? They must be a beatable team. Yeah, they have Giannis, and Giannis's personal mission and mission to be on this earth, I swear, is to destroy the Detroit Pistons. But like even the game week earlier in the season, way earlier in the season, like I hate to keep bringing it up because I feel like we always do, but like Ron missing those 2 free throws at the end of the game that easily could have gone down as a Piston victory. Over the years, even last year we beat the Bucks last year. We're starting to be more competitive against the Bucks. I know we snapped that really long losing streak that stretched like 3 or 4 years against them. There's a part of me that almost says, "Oh shoot, maybe we do want the Bucks." You find some way to slow down Damian Lillard, and then obviously, you get a game plan and try to get Giannis. I've almost like gaslighted myself into having this big board of teams I want, and number one is still the New York Knicks. I think that's an upset waiting to happen. I think they're a very beatable basketball team, and obviously we beat them in the season series. And then it's changed with my number two. I do want Milwaukee at two. I think they are a beatable team, and I think I'm going a bit out on a limb here by saying that's who I want. And it's really close with them, and then I do have Indiana at three. Just because I do think we struggle with stretch fives. Miles Turner torches us. I would love to see what he's been averaging against us this year. And also because I do think it's a rivalry, and I would just be mad for the rest of the summer if we lost to the Pacers and Halliburton skips all over us. It would just really be unpleasant. But then again,
Mhm.
if we beat them and do it to them, that'd be hilarious. But I go Knicks, Bucks, Pacers. Um, it's tight though, and it's really interesting right now because all three of those teams are exactly 18.5 games behind the number one seed as of today, which is super, super interesting. Thankfully, we do have the Wizards again tomorrow night, so expect us to put another win in the column. But it is going to be so interesting how 4, 5, and 6 end up in the East.
And we do also have one more win than both the Pacers and the Bucks as of this very moment. Pistons with
I,
37, Bucks and Pacers both with 36. Gabe, would you agree with that big board, or would you switch it up a little bit?
Um, I I kind of I mean, I think I do agree. I think I do want the Knicks first, especially if Jalen Brunson is still coming back off that ankle. But I think realistically, I kind of want the Bucks. You know, if
Ooh.
I know we have nobody that can guard Giannis,
I
but
mean, Stu has had some success guarding Giannis in the past at times.
yeah, but you
Yeah,
know,
it is Giannis. I know what you're saying. I got
I know I'd be super annoyed because he's gonna do his thing and the refs are gonna do their thing, and
you.
like this, it's Giannis. But Doc Rivers is a clown. I think they keep losing games, and they're like the main thing is that they're old and they're slow. They don't run the ball, and like we take more threes than them, and we run. So that's what happened to them last year when they played Indiana. Um, really, I don't want to play Indiana. I think they, like you said, Valley Miles Turner is gonna cook. Halliburton can get his points, and like they just run and they can score. And when we get into those games with like the Hawks, the
Mm.
Wizards, Indiana teams, we can lose those games just because that's how the NBA goes. And I think Nemhard can give Cade problems just because of how quick and strong he is. So I I guess I'll say the Knicks as well, just because they don't have Giannis and Dame, and they're different players in the playoffs. But honestly, I'd be happy with any of the matchups. Like I'm not there's not one that I like fear. I think we can win any of them. I think we would be underdogs in all of them, like based on the national media and stuff. Um, the one thing that I think leans us in favor in the Pacers matchup is that we'd have the best player on the floor. I'm not necessarily sure you could say that in the other two matchups, but just gotta wait and see.
Um, I I don't want to rule out with the Brunson injury, the New York Knicks dropping to 4. I don't want to rule out just yet that 3 seed being gone, like just yet. Gabe, like you mentioned, like really good point. This is usually like this tail end of the season is when teams who, okay, we're not that good, let's make a late push to get a good draft pick. Teams just kind of throw in the white towel and wave the white flag, and we're gonna be on the opposite end of that spectrum. We're gonna be turning it up, turning it up, turning it up. I'm not saying it's going to happen. It's incredibly far-fetched, but let's not rule out the New York Knicks giving up their spot because they're going to be starting Cameron Payne for the foreseeable future. Um, I think that's super interesting, and no matter what, like when you look at the Knicks, I know I'm going to be heated about Jalen Brunson's foul baiting conundrum. The same will be for Giannis. You know, like those are going to be two series that are going to be infuriating, and then the Pacers I've already touched on will be kind of like an annoying one. Either way, the blood will be boiling. But I mean, what's your list? What's your lookout for this? These
I I
potential
kind
playoff.
of I kind of have to agree with your list. I would go New York, Milwaukee, and Indiana. I'm with Gabe. I agree that we have the ability to beat all three of those teams. Um, but we've already shown we can beat the Knicks. Milwaukee, that's just tough with Giannis and Dame. And then I don't know, just fighting Indiana just seems like it was so difficult for us the last time we faced off. So it's just like I'm gonna have to say I agree with your list. Um, but like you said, there's a very big possibility that New York does fall out of that three spot. But at the same point, like even if we say we do somehow, right? While teams turn it down, we turn it up, and we do take that whatever 4-3 seed, right? We're still going to be the underdogs in a lot of these series because of the star caliber player that these other squads have. But I think I'm just gonna try to enjoy the moment of Pistons playoff basketball. The atmosphere at LCA has been absolutely incredible for throughout a lot of this season. I'm excited to see what it's like when we do actually make it to playoff basketball. Um, but I'm gonna go with New York, Milwaukee, and Indiana. Anything else you guys want to touch on while we're on this playoff topic, or should we move into what could potentially happen after the playoffs and in the off season? All right,
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead. So the Pistons are currently one of the front runners to land Michigan's own Devin Booker. I pitched this idea in the chat. I saw a report somewhere that said that you would have to give up 4 firsts and a rising star in order to get Devin Booker. To me, right off the bat, that means 4 firsts plus Jaden Ivey. But there was another proposed trade in the chat that I will let you guys touch on. So I'll start with Vali this time. I started with Gabe last time. So Vali, what would you give up for Devin Booker, and how would you feel about Devin Booker on this team?
Well, right away, my initial reaction to what they want, like their asking price, was absolutely not. I think that's a very realistic, and that should be got for Devin Booker. He's an incredible basketball player who's a proven winner. I think that's a very reasonable price line for him, but it is so difficult for me to say, yeah, let's do it. I will touch on the side of doing it. Connie, who's not recording with us today, like he put in a decent point. He's like, sorry, like I gotta do this. I gotta get another All-Star next to Cade. But I think it's so much to give up. The picks, I'm not too worried about. It's interesting to see how that'll work because the Knicks have a lot of our protected picks. It'll be interesting to see how much value those have going forward, going back from that Jalen Duren deal. Um, but then just giving up, like you'd have to part ways with. I think that for sure, most definitely means Ivy is going. I think that the Suns would almost call and say, okay, I want a Sar or I want Ron too. On top of that, you're going to need guys that fill in the contracts. Who makes money on our team? Tobias, Timmy, and Beef Stew. I think they look at that and they say, okay, I want Isaiah Stewart as well. So I think this move, theoretical move, while it would give us a superstar and it would give us the best backcourt in the NBA for a foreseeable future, does that outweigh completely disrupting the chemistry, the friendships, and basically the unity that this team has? Old Troy Weaver called it the core four, even though none of those guys on our team anymore, other than Stu. Like same vibes, that core. This is something that me personally, I want to see be grown completely organically. Maybe a few smaller moves. And that's something, you address in the off season, but I see a very similar pipeline with the way we're playing basketball, the way we've built this team to the Denver Nuggets. Obviously, we don't have Jokic. No one else is going to have Jokic, but we have Cade. Um, we have our star, and we have our pieces around him that we all drafted organically. Trading for Devin Booker could go really well. It could help us win championships, but it's going to really completely deplete our team of assets. The deal for Duren, I want to say the next 3 years are pick swaps with the New York Knicks, and they're 1 through 13 protected for us. After that, we have our 2 first-round draft picks. If you're giving up 4 picks, you're two outside of those 3. The 2 that are 4 and 5 years from now, where you have no idea how good you're going to be as a basketball team, for sure gone. Those will be going to Phoenix. On top of those pick swaps. So it's like, do you really want to deplete all your resources for what it is? It's a gamble because you're throwing away something that is one of the best stories in the history of the NBA of sports. The Pistons are on track to have the 6th highest increase in total win percentage from one year to the next. Do you really want to say, okay, we saw that, let's move it, let's do it all this summer? I just think the entire time in the back of your mind you'd be living with regret, thinking, man, what could that core have done? And I I'm not a huge risk taker in general. Maybe that's why I'm not a general manager. But this move, I just think it's too much. And I think it's too soon. If this is something that opened up 1, 2, 3 years from now, I think that's when we're more considerate of making that big move. Maybe once we've paid some of our guys and we have our financial situation under more knowledgeable of our financial situation after we've had to pay, the Ivies, the Durans, the SARs. But for the meantime, I put a pin in it and I say no, not because of Booker. I just think it's too much to give up.
I can see that. Gabe, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm in much the same boat. Obviously the Suns need like the whole world basically to make like the disaster that they've created pay off in any way. I'm sure there's good, with what Luca just went for, I'm not sure that you'd get anything remotely close to that because I think the Gobert trade was kind of like a turning point in how many first round picks you give up for a star. Even Devin Booker's probably more valuable than Gobert. Um, it would be amazing to have. I've predicted for a long time that he's going to end up on the Pistons. Actually, but I predicted after next year's summer. So we'll see. I'm not. Do you know how long his contract actually runs?
I do not.
All right, I'm going to look it up really quick. So if you want to talk for a sec.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah, yeah,
I'm in
you
the
keep
same boat
going.
as you guys. I don't want to get rid of the chemistry that this team has so far. Um, I really think that this team has something special chemistry wise, and I don't want to break that up. We and Cade's emerging into one of the stars in this league. Jalen Duren's on the verge of being one of the best bigs in this league at the moment. Especially if he can continue to rim protect the way he does and develop potentially maybe even a little bit more offensively so that he's a little bit more of a threat from when he is in that short row situation instead of just being a passer. Maybe he can turn those into like a mini jump shot. Maybe asking a little bit too much, but we'll see what happens. Um, but as much as I would love to have Devin Booker on this team, as much as I think that adding a second star next to Cade Cunningham would take us into that next level. I don't think now is the time to do it. I'm the same as you, Valley, not necessarily a huge risk taker myself. Probably why, again, I'm not a GM of a team just like you, but uh, I'm holding off for now. And I think if there was a way to sign that second star rather than trade for them and just keep adding to this team, would probably be my preferred method rather than getting rid of some of these players to acquire and picks to. I mean, I'm sure we're gonna have to do something like that eventually, but I'd like to sign that second star first before we trade for one. Uh, Gabe, did I buy you enough time?
You did. So he just completed the first year of his 4-year extension. Well, he's currently in this first year. The next 3 years he's gonna make 53, 57, and $61 million, which before this new CBA will increase the tax cap. It's about 33% of the cap, which I think is doable. But with Cade, it's probably gonna hit that All NBA Supermax money. Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren money coming in as well, even though they might be negotiable. Like you might not have to pay them as much as we think because they do want to be here. I think. Um, I think the money could work. Especially seeing how much Boston pays. I think we could. I'm not seeing exactly the how it works right now, but I think it could work depending on, if you don't have the Tobias Harris contract, don't have the Fontecchio, you just have to play along the margins a little more. And I think the one part that does intrigue me is to have Ivy, Cade, and Booker together because like
Mm.
that's enough
Yeah.
strength, length, and size for Cade to guard threes on defense. For instance, Jaden Ivey has huge arms. And then pair it with like Asar at the 4 to just be a menace. And JD, I think it is enough size to work defensively. And like, how do you stop that at all?
Well,
Um,
what star are you giving up then? What young star are you giving up if you have a star and still?
yeah, I mean, if you have Asar and Durant still, I don't know. Ron, I guess, or yeah, I guess you trade Ron and some picks and Tobias Harris. Like I said, I think like giving 2 picks, Ron, Tobias Harris. I think at the end of the day, that's kind of the package that they're going to receive.
Who suggested it? Gabe, you did suggest in the chat Ron, Toby, Bobby, and 2 first round picks.
Yeah. Just like something like that. Again, I'm not, Tobias Harris only makes 25 mil. Devin, I'm not sure how like the money actually works. And then Tim Hardaway Jr. right now is second on our payroll. So like, if I assume like even if we re-sign him, he's not gonna make 16 again. Um,
So I was gonna kind of pose this question. I'm gonna throw 3 guys at you. You can expand on it if you want, or just give a short answer. Are they gonna be on this team next season? Let's start with Tim Hardaway Jr.
He's expiring, yeah.
yeah,
I
he's
believe.
expiring.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to be on the team next season.
Okay.
Um,
Gabe.
I'm gonna have to agree with that.
Me too. Me too.
'Cause like the way
It's a
he's
tough
playing
one.
this year, I think he's gonna get another solid NBA contract. unless he really wants, because we're gonna pay. I think if we have to choose, I'm sure you're gonna bring the name up. I think we're gonna choose Beasley over Tim,
Oh, for
especially if
sure.
we think Ron can step into that starting role next year.
Yep. So that kind of answers mine and yours for the next one. Malik Beasley, is he back next season? I say yes.
Yeah, I think it's a lock.
I think the second there's eligibility to re-sign it, it'll be announced.
Okay.
And real quick, just to like make the money work here in a trade, Tobias
Mhm.
Harris, Fontecchio, and Ron Holland, for Devin Booker would work, and the Suns save 8 million there. So
Well,
money wise,
somebody
that
called
would,
Trajan Langdon.
yeah.
The other couple names I want to throw out at you guys is Simone Fontecchio on this team next season.
Oh, I sure hope so, man. I'm gonna say yes.
Yeah, like unless we want to trade him for a draft pick in this draft, which I don't think we really want to. I think we want to start to up our age a little bit on this team. I'd say he's on the team.
I don't know. I'm a
He
little
has another
hesitant about
year,
it.
right? Like
He
after
Yeah,
this.
does
he
have
signed a
another
2 year
year, but
16, I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
So but I do think that he is traded this offseason, in my opinion.
I think of all the players, he is the most tradable.
Yeah, I think he's on the edge of that bubble.
I don't want anyone to go. Like even saying yeah to Timmy made me hurt. I I would be hurt if Simone was gone, man. I just feel like everybody plays such a deep role in their culture, but obviously everyone, I mean in this culture of the team, but everyone can't stay, realistically. So I fully understand what you're saying, and I unfortunately I do agree. I do think he will be the most movable contract in the off season.
Mhm.
But I think we're keeping Simone.
Last name Tobias Harris.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. Any other note you guys want to touch on before we do get out of here today?
Bobby Clintman, is he on the team next season?
Yeah.
I think so. Even if he's not with the big league club, he may be playing for the Crews again.
Um,
But yeah, I do think so.
I do have one last thing, and not to be grouchy about us getting media attention, and not to be grouchy about anything Pistons related, but I do think that, especially in the last couple of weeks, I think that the overall media attention that the Detroit Pistons get, I think there's a really, like, seeing between the lines, there's a lot of lack of respect to the Pistons. I think this is most evident with Shaq going on a podcast. I think that was when we were 32 and 26, and he goes, "Oh, I don't care. The Pistons are boring. We're not talking about teams that are 32 and 26." And then last night when the TNT crew, or not even the main crew, they were covering the highlights of the Pistons Wizards game, and he called the Pistons boring again. And then after saying something ridiculous, he admits he doesn't even watch the Pistons. He also thought that Chauncey Billups was our coach. I just think that's really unacceptable. And then I should have looked it up in the meantime because we talked about it before the pod. But when or over the All-Star break, when Beef Stew and Jalen Duren went on ESPN, and Malika Andrews was interviewing them, and Duran said dog pound, and she took it as dog power. I believe it was, and she said that multiple times, and then Stu kept going dog pound, and kind of just purposely saying it a lot. And I just think like people read the headlines, they see that we win some games, but they're not like, okay, let's turn the TV on and let's watch the Detroit Pistons. I don't think that'll really come ever, unfortunately, but I think that like Detroit versus everybody motto is like you can still see it through so many different levels, and I think the lack of media respect that is being shown to our team, I think is something. And then additionally, like going off that Detroit versus everybody motto, like Isaiah Stewart, the lack of whistle he gets, like he just is uninvolved in plays sometimes and gets teased, like stuff like that. I just think that there's still a general underrepresentation of this team, and I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
Like I
the
love it. Like that's us.
yeah,
Like
the
sleep
crazy
on us.
whistle has been a theme for a lot of this year, and it's appropriate that one of the last things we're touching on is Detroit versus everybody, with tomorrow being 3-1-3 day. So if you were thinking about going to the game tomorrow,
You're
absolutely
kidding.
go.
I'm going to the game tomorrow. What
There you go.
fantastic news, man. It's 3-1-3 day tomorrow.
It's 3-1-3 day. I went last year on 3-1-3 day. It's just different on that day, and I can only imagine how incredible it's going to be tomorrow with this team being competitive, with this team just being one of the greatest stories in sports this year. Detroit's coming back. The Tigers had a magical run last year. The Lions have been favorites for a long time now, even though they underperformed in the playoffs this year. And the Pistons are now again one of Detroit's teams that are taking the sports world by storm. Any other notes on this team before we get out of here and we hopefully pick up another win tomorrow? Actually, let's do this. Next two games, Wizards and Thunder. We'll just close out the week on this. What are the Pistons going at? I'm going to say 1-1.
Yep, I
With those
agree.
2 games, I say we beat the Thunder.
I knew you were going to do that.
Before I even started it, I'm gonna start.
I knew it before I even asked the question.
You look at fourth year Cade, you look at fourth year Shea. Cade, the much better player. I think Cade, long term is gonna take another significant leap over the offseason, and I think he's just playing some good ball. I think the Thunder look a little bit shakier with Chet coming back.
The
I
other thing
think
is
that's a
when
win.
last time Asar guarded Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Shea had a little bit of a problem. So
This time he'll shoot 16 out of 16 at the free throw line, but it's gonna be a Piston win. 2-0.
The first 3 minutes.
I'm here for if the Pistons beat the Thunder, we're winning the ship. I think that's safe to say.
And I did have a few more things.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask: I don't have a Twitter. Have you heard anything about Jaden Ivey? Any updates? Any rumors?
Nothing really. He is walking in that underwater pool thing, the same thing Aiden Hutchinson was doing after he broke his leg. Jaden Ivey is out of the walking boot and has been seen at practice a couple of times, but no reports that I've seen as of yet on whether he will return this season.
And he looked like a little near like bouncing a little after Simone had that putback dunk to beat the buzzer. He looked really. I'm gonna keep saying his name, Simone, because that's my guy. After he had that putback jam, it looked like Ivy was almost like jumping a little bit, like getting hype. And I think we should be right around the corner of the next 4-week update. I feel like so it should be coming soon.
It should be, hopefully.
Valley, on your respect thing, I think it's fair that we have no respect. We've been terrible for so long. You don't get respect based on half a season of play. So I think once these playoffs start, if we prove it, and then next year if we're consistent, good, and don't take a step back like Orlando did this year, then I think the respect comes because they know like, oh, these guys proved it last year, they're for real, and now they're backing up this year. And then last thing, Connie mentions a lot. He thinks the improvement in JD is his like athleticism, functional athleticism, his ability to like stay running, stay engaged, and have energy the entire game. I think Cade could really improve his game. He looks like I think a lot of the he gets blocked sometimes at the rim late in games. He has those like weak passes. I think it could just be like if this guy gets stronger, if he eats a hamburger, if he just gets a little more conditioning, more NBA in shape. I mean, it's tough to like have the ball in his hands so much for so many games, but I think that could really level up his game. And if there's one player that I think takes that upon himself to improve, it'll be Cade over the offseason. So that's just the thing I'm gonna look forward to those like pictures of Cade in like no shirt on in a gym, looking stronger, looking larger, and just more fit for next season.
Absolutely. Valley, anything else before we get out of here?
I think we have 3 all defensive players in our roster, and no, nothing else.
All right, sounds good. If you're still listening, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Buff Sound Podcast. Follow us on all of our social media platforms, and until next time, throw the Buffs on Detroit because the future is bright.